Right. So what I'm going to first show you is the actual interview itself. And this is what I was hoping that you guys could run through on your own time, is to just run through the interview. It's quite a lengthy interview, and just get a feel for what it looks like and how the project is working, and what you're going to be testing for. Just I feel like that's the best way to familiarize yourself with what you're going to be testing. So the way to do that is to just actually just run through this interview, and I will give you the link. I'm not going to run through it right now because, as I said, it is lengthy. But you can see how it works, right? It's, as Jody says, it's like TurboTax. You can just select different options. You can just play around with it, basically go through it. I would suggest when you're typing in names and stuff that you just keep it short, like that, because it gets, as I said, it gets quite long. And try and remember, what you're typing, just to check that if it's right. This is, as I said, the first time you're running through it, very informal.
Yeah, the first time, don't worry about keeping track. Just kind of play around with it, and feel free to answer a question a certain way and then see what happens. And then feel free to go back and answer it a different way and see if anything different happens. Again, it's really just to get yourself familiar with the form and the questions, because what's going to happen is we'll give you testing scenarios like, okay, so you're going to pretend you have 2 kids and you have this and that and this. So we're going to give you scenarios. And when we give you those scenarios to actually perform a actual test, it's going to make more sense if you're more familiar with the form. So, yeah.
So that's the first thing, is to just run through this whole thing. Maybe I should explain what the form is. It's a abuse prevention order, which is called a 209A in Massachusetts. And it's basically a restraining order to stop somebody from abusing you. And the thing with this form is that it's actually not one form, it's a whole packet of forms. It's made up of, I think right now, 8 different forms, and you won't answer all of them. It just depends on what your answers are. So the first thing to do is just to go through it, run through it, put in random information. As Jody says, you don't have to keep track the first time you do it. You just run through it and get to the end. And what happens is you get about here, you get a preview screen where you'll be able to preview the PDF that you've generated. And then you get to sign it, and you can just do like a mark, and then you can download it. And that'll be the first time that you're seeing the kind of packet of forms all together. The PDF is one PDF with all the information that you've put in here. Once you've done that once, it shouldn't take you that long to do it if you're just putting in random information, if you're not really, thinking about what you're saying, but just rather spending time reading the questions and, familiarizing yourself with the layout of the form. The next step to do would be to go over here. Sorry, the video links. Okay.
Go to that tab, yeah.
And now something that we've pointed out and that we were discussing is recording yourselves doing the test, right? And the way that you would do this is you would basically open up Zoom just by yourself. You just have a call by yourself, and you share your screen, and then you press record, and you don't have to say anything. You just play around on your screen, and it will just record everything that you do. If you're not comfortable with that, that's completely fine. But what it will serve is that if something goes wrong, it'll be easy for us to track where it went wrong. You'll then upload that video into a folder here called test videos, and I'll send you guys the name of the how you're supposed to name your videos,
like the naming conventions. Yeah.
Um,
what it'll do is, like Maeve said, it'll help, like, say if the developer wants to know specifically what happened, it'll be easier for them to go back and look. But like Maeve said, if you're not comfortable doing that, if you just make a note of the things that you select, the name and things like that aren't as important. You don't have to write out the whole name that you put in. But when you get to some of the questions that are very specific, like what type of harm, and how many kids, and just some of the details like that, it gets, it really helps because this is such a long interview. You actually might not remember what you picked because there's so many different ways that it asks certain things.
So like here, you would want to record that you've said that you have children or no, you don't have children. And as Jody says, you know, it's much, you can of course write everything out, but it's much easier just to record it because then you can just run through it like a normal interview and you don't have to think. But we obviously understand that some people might not be comfortable with that. So it's really up to you. And then obviously once you've sorry,
no, I was just going to say, because what we'll be asking you to do is when we give you a scenario, we'll give you the scenario, we'll ask you to run through the interview and answer all the questions based on that scenario. And then when you get the output, the PDF, the forms like Maeve referred to, the forms or series of forms based on the way you answered those questions, we'll ask you to compare, you know, do the forms look correct based on everything that you input in the interview? Did the right boxes check? Did the name show up correctly? Did everything, you know, is everything that should be in the form correct and expected based on what you put as answers in the interview? And when you get to questions like this right now, like go back, Maeve, this is a good one, you know, check everything that is true. It's really good for you to make a note of, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be formal. You could do it on a piece of scratch paper, but just, you know, make a note of which ones you checked because you want to make sure that, again, when you get to the PDF that you remember, because that's what we're going to be asking you to do. That's going to be the test, is that does the form look like the way you answered the questions in the interview? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The other thing that I would like just to mention is that this interview isn't perfect. It's a lot of work, maybe 2 or 3 months has gone into this. And you know, we've had subject matter experts on this who've been working on this for years. If you guys see something that makes you confused, it's always good to note it, right? If you're like, if you come to a question and you're like, wow, I don't think that, you know, I would understand that, or basically this is aimed at low-level literacy, self-represented litigants. If you see something that you're like, that looks confusing, or it's confusing to me, it's always good to note that. And we really appreciate constructive criticism. It's just, it's a work in progress, and you're going to be part of helping us develop a interview that's going to be, you know, able to help a lot of people. So the first thing to do is to run through the interview by yourself, just no scenario. You just go through it and you just see like where it takes you. Try and get familiar with how it works. The second thing to do, so that would be something that you guys could possibly do tonight. I don't think it would take that long. I estimate maybe, how long, Jody? Like 30 minutes if you're just kind of...
I'd say the first time I probably spent about an hour, but I'm also way more detail oriented than, I probably did way more messing around than was necessary. So I'd say, you know, anywhere from like 30, maybe 30 to 45 minutes just the first time, because you're kind of playing around and getting familiar with it. I've done it at least 10 times now for testing. And so now I can run through it in like 20 minutes.
So yeah, you just run through it. The only thing that I'm concerned about, Jody, this doesn't submit to court, right?
Eventually, yes. No, it never submits to the court.
Okay.
It just, the screen you'll get to, the final screen will be a
download.
It will show you like a PDF, and you'll be able to email it to yourself, or you'll be able to just click on it and open it. And then when you open it, you can do, you know, it'll open in the web browser, and then you can just do save as, and it'll save it as a PDF, and then you can save it so that we'll have that reference of that test.
So yeah, so don't have to worry about it going to court or anything. But basically, yeah, you just run through this whole thing, you see how it feels, note anything that you are confused about or anything like that, or something that you think might be able to be improved. And that would probably be your task for after work or whatever today. The next thing to do is, as Jody said, we use scenarios. Scenarios are basically stories where we say, okay, you guys pretend that this is your case, right? You pretend that you're against a defendant who, you know, depending on this, you've got the relationship right here. So here is not parent of other children, and then you select one of these things. So that's actually part of the early part of the test. I don't know if you guys remember up here of your relationship.
You have to click back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you do, just as it might help, if you need to go back a bunch, the quickest way to do it is up on the top left, seen where it says mass access in the bar. It's faster up there to click the back up there if you're going back a bunch.
Oh,
If you're just going back one screen, click the back down there, but it's faster if you got to do like 5 or 6 backs, it's quicker to do it up there. Just as a random side note.
Okay, so for example, the scenarios that we have right now are the relationship scenarios, and we're specifically testing that these get pulled through correctly. So for example, this one, the defendant is other parent of children. Is that worded right, Jody?
Yeah, so the defendant, what that's saying is that for example, I'm the mother of 2 children, and the defendant, the person who is abusing me or hurting me, that person who I want the order against, he is the father of my 2 children. So that's what we're saying. And then there's another scenario where I have 2 children. The defendant is not the other parent of those 2 children of mine.
Okay, so for example, how would you complete this one? Defendant is other parent of children. So you'd have, do you have children under 18? Yes, you've got, say, 1 child.
Mm-hmm.
I am not responsible. We haven't dictated what it says there, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So you can say you're not. That's the easiest path to say that you're not. You can say my child is primus. What would make them not 18? My God.
Like just 2015.
Okay, thanks.
Just like, yeah, January 1st or something. It doesn't matter.
Okay, and then here,
and then, yeah,
is the defendant this child's other parent? So in terms of this scenario, you would say yes. So over here, you say yes. You press next, and then you look back at the scenario and you see that the household, you've never lived in the same household. So you've never lived in the same household. You press next, and you're not a couple, and you were never married. So
for this one, when it says not a couple, or I forget the way it says it in the spreadsheet, but you would just check none of those boxes.
So you don't check anything here.
And see, go back to the spreadsheet. And then if it says, see where it says dated, dating, engaged, past engaged. So if you go back to the form, then if dated, you could say we used to date. I think we should update the spreadsheet to match what it says here, because that's just going to be way less confusing.
Yeah.
And then, we are engaged, whatever. So if it says engaged, you would click we are engaged, and then I was never married, because you're engaged, but you've never been married to them. So those are the 2 boxes that you would pick.
So here it would be none and never married. So you'd say, you wouldn't tick anything here, and you'd say I was never married, and then you press next. And I think, is that all you're testing? What is all of this?
I think for that, I have not been able to get those questions to come up yet. There is a certain combination of way you answer things that will give you some kind of an in-law question and some kind of a are you related by blood question. And I have not, all the different scenarios I've done so far, I've never had that yet. So I think for the purposes of this, we're fine. It's just.
How can you check both of these at the same time?
Oh, interesting.
That's a bug.
Unless you were married and divorced and remarried.
I guess. That's also a good point. Not many people do that. Anyways. Okay, so that's how you do with that's how you go with the scenarios. And then I think here is where we're going to put the PDFs, right? Or not? Jody?
I think the results, you're just going to want to put like as expected, or if you had errors. And if you have errors, there's a form on if you go back to the questionnaire. Yeah, see right down there on every page, that link is on every page. So you could just
But now it's not specifically a test case, or is it? Because we can link to this and we can say which one it is. We can say it's row 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's always good just to tell us how we can contact you, so that, you say it's me, Delaney, or, that's always a helpful thing to do. And you just go through this and complete it if you find something wrong.